Hey guys, welcome to Unit 6. The first lesson in Unit 6 is learning how to add and subtract polynomial expressions. You've heard the word expressions before, you've heard of adding and subtracting, but you might not have heard of the word polynomial. So to get started, let's look at what is a polynomial, and then what are some other vocab words that we should know. So a polynomial is an expression that can have constants such as -5 or 3 or -27, right? Constants are any term that does not have a variable, which is the next blank. They can have constants or they can have variables such as x or y, and they can have exponents like the 4 in x to the 4th power or the 2 in x squared. Okay, and these polynomials can be combined by adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So we can combine these polynomials to put them in their simplest form. This is something we looked at the beginning of the year. We're going to take it to the next step by adding in some exponents. But it'll be a good review to just remember how to add and subtract and combine like terms. Now that we know what a polynomial is, let's look at different ways that we can write polynomials. One of the ways we can write them is in standard form. That is going to be the most condensed version. They are written from the highest degree to the lowest degree. Now you might be wondering, okay, what is a degree? Well, if we jump down to the bottom or to the one term, the degree of a polynomial, or the degree, is the biggest the degree is just the value of the exponent. Okay, so if you want to make a little note, degree is referring to the exponent. So in this little example that we have here, we have 7x to the 5th power plus 2x squared minus 3. Anytime you see an equation like this, it is written in standard form. It's written from the highest degree to the lowest degree because my first term, my first variable has an exponent or a degree of 5. My second section under that plus 2x squared is my next highest variable, degree on my variable. And then that minus 3 would come last. It doesn't have an x or an exponent on that. So that would be at the end. Okay, so we always go in that order. From there, we'll fill in those areas in just a second. But let's talk about what these other 4 vocabulary terms are. The leading coefficient, when written in standard form, it is the coefficient of a polynomial's leading term. So I'm just going to write it is, the coefficient of a polynomial's leading term. So the leading term is the first thing written. So that 7x to the 5th power is my leading term. The leading coefficient is that 7. So I'm actually just going to draw an arrow right there and avoid that other arrow and say that's my leading coefficient. 7 is my leading coefficient. My leading term is 7x to the 5th power. Now, the degree of a polynomial. The degree of the polynomial is determined by the first term, or the degree of the first term. So it's the biggest exponent. Right, it's to the biggest degree. So this right here is the degree. Okay? It tells us the degree of the entire polynomial. So I'm just going to write degree of poly. All right, and now what's a term? I've been using that word a couple times. You've probably heard it before. Well, a term is a single number or variable. Or it could be numbers and variables combined together. So in each of my 3 instances that are added by either a plus or a minus, the 7x to the 5th power, the 2x squared, and the -3 are all terms. And the last term, what is a constant? Right? It's a number that stands alone. Like we said earlier, it could be like -5 or 3. or 27 or negative 45. If it does not have a variable with it, it is called a constant. Okay, so now that we got the vocab out of the way, let's look at what we can do to be successful in this lesson. We will be able to distribute, to eliminate the parentheses, identify like terms, and then add and subtract, or add or subtract those like terms, and rewrite in standard form if needed. Remember, standard form is always written from the highest degree to the lowest degree, and to identify that, we look for the biggest exponent. So let's look at some examples. In example number 1, we have the following two polynomials that we're being asked to add together. So we have 3x squared plus 5x plus 7. That's a polynomial. And then we're going to add it to 4x squared plus 2x minus 3. So we are looking to just combine those two. In order to do that, we have to combine like terms. Okay, when I'm adding two polynomials together, I don't have to worry too terribly much about distributing, because if you distribute a positive 1, right, anytime we just see a plus outside the parentheses, it would be plus 1. Just like if it was a minus, it would be minus 1. But distributing that positive 1 to each of my terms in the parentheses is not going to change their value. So when we're adding two polynomials together, it's not necessary for there to be parentheses, but to go ahead and combine my like terms, I'm going to identify those. And if you remember at the beginning of the year, we combined them by squaring, circling, making a triangle around it. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and box my first term, that 3x squared. Now I'm looking for terms that also have an x squared in them. Those will be my like terms. I see over here 4x squared. I don't see any other x squareds, so those are going to be my only two like terms. Now let's look at my plus 5x. Okay, I'm looking for anything that just has one x with it. I see plus 2x. That's also a like term. Now for my last one, I'm going to triangle. So my plus 7, I'm looking for anything that's a constant. It doesn't have a variable. And I see negative 3. Let's go ahead and make that triangle a little bit bigger so it takes the entire number. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my equation with my like terms near each other so that I can add them together. So my box terms were 3x squared and then plus 4x squared. And I'll leave that box rounded right there. Then we have plus 5x plus 2x, circle those, and then plus 7 minus 3 with a triangle around it. Now let's simplify those expressions to find our final expression. So 3x squared plus 4x squared, we add them as if it were just with an 1x. X squared is just another variable, so we are left with 7x squared. 5x plus 2x is 7x. And 7 minus 3, or positive 7 minus 3, is 4. So there is my equation. It is already written in standard form because my biggest coefficient is, not my biggest coefficient, my biggest degree is 2, and it's written first. And then I have an exponent of 1, or just x, and then my constant at the end. So this is going to be my final answer. Let's go ahead and identify some key features of polynomials by identifying the leading coefficient. Remember that leading coefficient is the first value. It's the value, the coefficient of the biggest degree. So my leading coefficient would be 7. The degree is determined by that first term, that biggest exponent. It's 2. And then the number of terms in this. I have 1 term, 2 term, and 3 term. So 3 terms there. Let's look at some more examples. Okay, this problem's gonna be a little bit trickier because we are subtracting this time. So we have the polynomial 2x squared plus x plus 10 minus 5x squared minus 4x plus x. So the first thing we need to realize is that we are subtracting that entire second polynomial from the first one. And so we have to distribute that negative or that -1 to everything in the parentheses before we can combine like terms. So I'm going to start off by doing that. I am going to distribute -1 to my 5x squared, to my -4x, and to my +6. Okay, I don't have to do anything to that first polynomial, so I'm just going to copy down 2x squared plus x plus 10. Now let's go ahead and start distributing by multiplying. So -1 times 5x squared is -5x squared. -1 times -4x is +4x. And -1 times +6 is -6. Now that we have done that step, let's go ahead and identify my like terms by boxing, circling, and triangulating. That's not really a word, but we're going to go with it. 2x squared, I'm looking for anything else with an x squared, -5x squared. Make sure that you box the sign in front. That is so important. Okay, let's circle my +x. Where's another one with just x? Plus 4x. And triangle around the 10 and the -6. Now let's rewrite with my like terms near each other. 2x squared minus 5x squared. Put a lovely box around that. Plus x plus 4x. Circle that. And then plus 10 minus 6. And now let's combine like terms. 2x squared minus 5x squared, just take those coefficients and subtract them. 2 minus 5 is -3. Tag on the variable x squared. X plus 4x is 5 x's. 10 minus 6 is +4. So there you have it. There is my other simplified polynomial. Let's identify the leading coefficient, degree, and number of terms. So the leading coefficient in this one is -3. My degree is 2, and the number of terms is still 3. All right, 2 more examples. Number 3 is written in words. So we're going to have to write it as an equation. So it says subtract -2x squared minus 3x plus 1 from 4x squared plus 5x minus 2. When it says subtract this from this, we write the second equation first, because it's telling us to subtract this one from this one. So let's go ahead and start off by writing 4x squared, and let's use parentheses here to identify the two polynomials, plus 5x minus 2. And then we're going to write minus, because it's subtracting it, and then we're going to write 2x squared minus 3x plus 1. Now that I have my polynomial written, the first thing I'm going to do is distribute that -1, since it is subtracting them. Don't forget to use parentheses here. So I'm going to multiply -1 times -2x squared times -3x and +1. Let's rewrite my first polynomial because nothing is changing there, and then let's start distributing. -1 times -2x squared is +2x squared. -1 times -3x is +3x. -1 times +1 is -1. Now let's combine like terms. Now that I have my like terms, let's go ahead and group them together so that we can combine them. Okay, we have them all grouped, and let's combine. We're seeing the square there. Don't do that. Don't do like me. We have 6x squared plus 8x minus 3. There we go. The leading coefficient on this one is 6. The degree is 2, and I have 3 terms. Something to be aware of. Make sure it's in standard form. Make sure it's going from biggest degree to smallest degree, which would be a constant. If there's no constant, that's fine. If it skips a value, if it goes like it has an x to the 4th and then an x squared, but there's no x to the 3rd, that's fine. Just still go in order from greatest to least, from biggest to smallest. Let's look at this last one. It's a little bit of a combination. It has a couple different parts. We are subtracting and then we are adding. So let's make sure that we take care of the subtracting first. We move in order from left to right. So the first thing I'm going to do is take care of that -1. I'm going to distribute it to my 4x plus 6 so that then I can combine all my like terms. So I'm going to rewrite the first part and then I'm going to distribute. Okay, and as you noticed, after I distributed, I went ahead and wrote that last part, the 5x squared plus 7. After you've distributed any negatives to an expression, you do not need the parentheses anymore to separate them because, again, like I said earlier, the adding is going to kind of keep it the same. So let's identify my like terms. I'm going to box this -2x since it's my first term, and I'm looking for any other term with just an x. I see right here -4x, and I don't see any others. Now let's circle my positive 13x squared. I'm looking for anything else with an x squared. I see 5x squared. Now let's look and see if there are any constants. There are -6 and +7. Let's go ahead and rewrite and then combine like terms. Okay, it doesn't matter what shapes you want to use to group them as long as you can identify them. You could also be underlining or double underlining, whatever makes sense for you. Let's go ahead and rewrite with combined like terms. -2x minus 4x is -6x plus 13x squared plus 5x squared is 18x squared. And -6 plus 7 is +1. Okay, but I have to check and see, is this in standard form? Oh no, my biggest degree, the x squared is not first. So this is not in order, this is not in standard form. Let's rewrite it in standard form. That 18x squared should come first. It does not need that plus in front of it, right? My x term will come next, so -6x, and then the +1 will follow at the end. So make sure you check and make sure that it's in standard form. Remember, that's just in order of degree. Now we can identify the leading coefficient as 18. The biggest degree is 2, and there are still only 3 terms in this. Okay, I hope that made a little bit of sense to you, okay? Hopefully it was just a little bit of a review with some added vocab. Please let your teacher know if you have any questions.